I'm Madeline Petersen, S-E-N, Mosley. And I moved from San Francisco with my dad and my mother in May of 1938 to Clarksville. This is where we are at. My dad had a store, general merchandise, and we also sold gasoline. We had 3 pumps. We had white gas, regular, and supreme. I think we were selling it for 12.5 cents a gallon. I wouldn't swear to it though. And I came from San Francisco, as I said, and up to Clarksville, and we had a schoolhouse. And there was the classes from 1st grade until the 8th grade. Well, I just graduated from grammar school, and I was supposed to be going into junior high. And I came to Clarksville. I'm back in grammar school again. But it was great, except that the teacher, that she was used to it, but I wasn't. And I had a class in San Francisco, 32 kids was in my class. And here I come up to the school, there's 15 kids in the whole school. And the teacher said, "You have to concentrate." And I said, "I can't." And she was going A, B, C, D, or 1, 2, 3, and I'm going along with her instead of paying attention to my class. And there was Betty Lou Lorraine and Everett Dalton and myself was in my class. And so anyhow, finally she said, "Well, if you don't concentrate, I'm going to have to give you an F." And I thought, if you give me an F, my dad will kill me. So I learned how to concentrate. And but this was Highway 50, and we had a lot of traffic. Everybody from practically LA going to Lake Tahoe, and that was the destination, was Lake Tahoe. And then all the lumber trucks, they would stop here. And then we had mines in the area, and they would be hauling gravel or whatever. They would stop. And we had a good business to survival. And Clarksville, it was a little town. We had wonderful neighbors, and we had the Jurgers, we had the Griggses, we had Frank Griggs, and he was a cripple, and his house is over here. And anyhow, my dad said I had to go up and get a bucket of water per day for him, so because he had a well. So anyhow, that I went and got a bucket of water, said, "Good morning, Frank." Fill up his bucket, take it inside the house, and he had a place to put it by the sink. And I says, "Goodbye," and away I'd go. And then this property here was I think it was his uncle, but I wouldn't swear. It might have been his dad's at one time, then his uncle's. And then on up there was the Sam Kybers. And Sam Kybers, he was a very notable man, him and his wife, and we call her Lady Tata. And he worked for Sutter down in Sutter's Fort, and his wife cooked for everybody, the guests. So when Sutter retired, then Sam, he came and lived in Clarksville until he died. And then the next house, there was a little house, was Harvey Tong's, and he was a bachelor, and he was related to the Tong family. They had I guess it was John Tong. He had a lot of children. And so then beyond that, there was a house, and it was Billy Mayhew's house. And then beyond that, a man came along, and this was in the I think in the early 40s, built the little White House up here. And anyhow, then we had the railroad house, which was owned by the Tongs, and they were building it they were thinking at one time the train from Sacramento was going to come to Clarksville. And so that's why they named it the Railroad House. And unfortunately, the train couldn't get over White Rock Hill, so it went to Latrobe. And we lost out. I mean, that was a big thing. And so anyhow, that they had the house, I think it had 5 bedrooms. At that time, that's a big house. And so I wouldn't swear to it, but I think they had a bathroom. And then there's another little house. It was just like a front room, kitchen, bedroom, and outhouse. And we call them cabins. And then out in the field was Jess Tong's house. And it was a small 2-bedroom, front room, kitchen, 2 bedrooms, bathroom, and that's it. Then across the street was Mrs. Tong's house, and it was a 2-bedroom, and front room, 2 bedrooms on the side, no bathroom. And Clarksville didn't have electricity when we got here, and so we had a Delco plant that you crank it up and start it, and it gives you electricity. Then we had butane lights in the store, and at the house we had kerosene lamps plus from the generator, and we had butane lights and the generator lights in the store. But anyhow, PG&E wanted to put electricity in Clarksville, and Joe Jerger was the one that was holding up their progress. It had to come through his property. Well, his property starts at White Rock Road and coming up, and all he had was cattle. Well, cattle eat hay, and but he always took the cattle to the mountains in the summertime. So anyhow, PG&E said, well, we'll pay you to go through your property. The man didn't need money, so he sort of sloughed it off, and would this bother the cattle? And so anyhow, my dad said, Joe, talk to them. They'll pay you. If you get electricity to your house, Mabel can get a refrigerator, a washing machine, an iron, instead of a gasoline iron that it could blow up and kill her. My mother used it. She got one because everybody said, oh, you got it, instead of the iron, the flat iron on the stove. And so she says, well, I will. And then she thought, you got to pump it up and be scared it might explode. And so anyhow, that was the end of the iron. And then we sent our clothes out. But anyhow, that evidently my dad did a good job of selling, and he talked to PG&E. So Clarksville got electricity, and Mabel got all the electric appliances, and Joe got a Cadillac, and with air conditioning. And so anyhow, everybody was happy. And then the electricity went on to Shingle Springs, so that, and then connect all the way to Placerville. Well, people moved. A lot of the people, and I brought this book, These Lonely Hills, to show her, and this is back in 1884-85, and all these people, they either moved to Folsom, Sacramento, or Placerville. They didn't move to Shingle or Diamond or El Dorado. They went to the big town. And then a lot of, there was a house way over here in the field, and it was a great big 2-story house. George Kybers lived in there, and his family. Then there was a little cabin in behind. But it's funny that things disappeared in Clarksville. We had a 3-story tank house And I've asked these people, what happened to it? Nobody knows. It just disappeared. We kept the store going, and I closed it in '52, and he rented it out, and he sold, well, he closed it, I think, in '60. And then we had the Mormon Tavern, and they said, some of these people, you know, they make up these stories. I don't know where they get them. But anyhow, they said the Mormon Tavern, they burned it. And it was a beautiful building, big, large. People, first it started out as a mortuary. And a man, because up on the hill we had the Clarksville Cemetery. So naturally this big building would be perfect for a funerals. And so anyhow, that's what it was until he moved. And then he sold it. But then Joe Jerger, he used it as a home, a residence. And upstairs they had petitions for rooms because he had 3 girls. And then later on they got married and they had their kids and what have you. And you know how everybody is. We got to go and see Grandma and Grandpa. And it was a big thing. And I used to love to go over and visit with Mabel Jerger. And she'd always give me a glass of milk and cookies. And we'd sit there by the big window there in the dining room. And you could see the freeway. Or before that, you could see the old road coming down into Clarksville. And she said, oh, look, cars are coming. There's a car, there's a car. There's a car leaving. You know, we didn't have too much to entertain us, as you could tell. A car would turn us on. It was not a tavern, a drinking tavern.
Oh.
It was a tavern for like a layover or a hotel, like a hotel tavern.
Okay.
I don't think anybody objected to El Dorado Hills. And then when Parker come along, you know, with Serrano, I mean, we want progress. We don't want to be, as Betty January says, we are a ghost town. We don't want that classification. This was a mining, this whole El Dorado County was a mining area. I would love it to come back and be a town. And because, you know, first thing you got to do is right up here where the freeway is open the road for accessibility. And then we have the developers, Ken Wilkinson and Jim Brunello. They could have, people would buy lots to build houses. But the main thing is, and the reason also is water. Now there's no problem with water because we've got EID. So that, you know, it used to be, we only had a 12-foot well, and it was a dug well. And there was the neighbor next door to us, they never had a well because they couldn't find water. And then Kybers, I don't know whether they had a well or not, but anyhow, Frank Griggs, he had a well, and water was the problem. Mrs. Tong had a well, and and then right up on the hill, the old road comes around. Now this here, and I've yelled and screamed and hollered for years, this is the original Lincoln Highway. And they said, no, 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 it went over on 40 or 80, as everybody knows it. And I said, no, 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 they split in Reno. Half went down 80 today, which is 40 then. And the other came down 50, all the way on 50. It never went off on to Forney Road or anywhere else. It came straight down Highway 50, and that was it. And it didn't go down White Rock Road. It was after it left Clarksville, then that was Highway 50, and then it went into Folsom. It was just a city.
Right.
a town. It was all ranchers. Everybody ran cattle. I mean, they didn't have 5 acres where you have ranchers today, or an acre. Oh, I got a ranch. How big is it? An acre or a half an acre? I mean, this is thousands of acres. Tourists, they had to, because it counted gasoline. You know, they would leave Sacramento. You know how it is in Sacramento. Try and find a service station. And you're driving through, and well, oh, you pass this one. Well, we'll see another one. Up, pass another one. So they come to Clarksville. Oh God, there's a service station. And they would come through Folsom. And it's funny that our gasoline prices was the same as Sacramento. And the distributor we got our gasoline from, Standard Oil, they had a big outlet, tanks in Folsom, and they would deliver to us. Then above Shingle, they would get gasoline from Clarksville, but their gasoline was higher than ours. So we sold ours as my dad said, you know, we sold it as Sacramento prices. So everybody would learn, get gas in Clarksville before you get to Shingle. Otherwise it cost you more. And it was quite you know, it was a draw. And then we also sold soda and beer. And it was, now this we're talking about, the heat. It's 114 in the shade. And these cars would boil after they came over White Rock Road, White Rock Hill. And so anyhow, Dad would tell them where the Wells Fargo building is, said park your car there in the shade and let it cool off. And so they would come over to the store and have a soda, have a beer, have sandwiches, or just sit and visit with the cattle people or anybody that would come in. It was a meeting place. And it was great.